A message came from Russia today. While Zelensky was lulling Trump to sleep in Mar-a-Lago, Ukrainian drones treacherously attacked Putin's residence. Well, to be completely accurate, they didn't actually attack, but tried to attack one of the residences, but failed, because the valiant Russian air defense forces completely stopped them, destroyed them, and didn't let them get anywhere near even one of the leader's 147 residences. Well, this vile attack on their beloved one. So, or rather, the attempted attacks, yes, which are even more vile than the destruction of Mariupol, Bucha, and Kharkiv. Maybe even 12 times more vile. Because of this, Russia is rejecting absolutely all words, promises, oaths, and pledges previously given to the United States, Europe, Ukraine, and Khan Beatty in the 13th century. But it hasn't been fulfilled yet, so Russia was going to fulfill it, but now it won't. Well, what does this mean? Maybe there are forces within the Ukrainian army that want to stop the peace talks and have enough influence to send a drone and bomb Putin's residence right at the moment of negotiations. Or is it just that the Moscows made this up so they don't have to fulfill anything? What did Putin promise Trump? Well, right before the conversation with Zelensky, he promised it to see if Ukraine would agree to it. Once they learned the answer was no, they claimed to be offended and said they'd reconsider everything. Of course, you can't figure this out without a liter of tequila, but seriously. Actually, there are two questions. First, do we believe the Kremlin statements? And the second question is, what does Russia actually want? Over the next 20 minutes, we will figure out these questions together. In the meantime, the subscribe button, the bell, and the likes are still in the same places as before. Plus, in the last few days, you can download my entertaining political economy. This is a book called Capitalism 101. Starting January 1st, we will switch it back from free to paid, and you will be able to buy it on Amazon, on Camerton Global. Well, all right, so about our Moscow diplomatic geniuses, can they be trusted?
From hypersonic missiles to main battle tanks, Russia loves to boast about its military innovations. Time and again, we've seen the country's president, Vladimir Putin, and his various Kremlin cronies unveil bizarre fighter jets and missile systems that are supposedly meant to change the face of war like never before. We've also seen many of these so-called superweapons turn out to be complete failures, many of which ended up being nothing more than expensive, embarrassing mistakes, sitting unused in warehouses instead of dominating the battlefield.
This is the British television program, The Military Show, watched by about 2 million people, mostly in Europe. Let's, as they say, take a look ourselves and see what they've dug up there.
The T-14 Armata was supposed to continue Russia's rich legacy of creating some of the toughest and most formidable tanks on the planet. So far, it has failed on all fronts, and these failures began from day one. Several T-14s were first publicly showcased at the Victory Parade in Moscow in 2015. During the rehearsal, one of them suddenly stopped. This was just the first of many signs that the Armata would never live up to expectations, but that didn't stop Kremlin propaganda from presenting it as a breakthrough in tank engineering. Indeed, for more than 15 years since work on the Armata officially began in 2009, it has remained one of the most popular topics for discussion. The state prints postage stamps featuring the Armata, and numerous officials have proudly showcased its design. And the Russian army initially announced grand plans to acquire about 2,300 of these tanks by 2020.
Everything is great. The Armata is the coolest, the best parade tank in the world, but it's good for driving back and forth here and there, especially when no one is shooting at it. Subtitles: Dimitrorzok spent billions. The whole world has been warned about the great power of the armored forces. And, well, everyone got scared, of course, yeah, but there's just a little problem. Oh, a small one, but still a problem.
Dmitry Rogozin, the former head of the state corporation Roscosmos, admitted that the Armata tank is completely unsuitable for combat operations.
That the Armata is not suitable for what? For war? It's very good, but it's not suitable for war. Well, that means it was made for parades as a scare tactic. And of course, they stole $1 billion or maybe $2 billion along the way. I mean, they didn't steal. No, they didn't steal. That's not the right word. They communized it. There's no communism anymore, but they keep communizing. And of course, everyone does it, from young to old. Yes, from young to old, that's right. The residence that was bombed, or was supposed to be bombed, by Ukrainian Armata drones could have chased away those filthy Ukers, as they call them in Moscow today, just for being from Zakarpattia. Well, but
Moreover, in 2024, the head of Rostec, Sergei Chemezov, openly admitted that this tank was simply too expensive to deploy in Ukraine. Russian troops instead relied on alternatives, including the T-90 and decades-old Soviet tanks like the T-62. Well,
so did we attack the tank? Yeah, sometimes there's a mistake or two.
the same can be said about the Sukhoi Su-75 Shah and Mat, which was once proclaimed as the next flagship fighter of the Russian Air Force, but still hasn't made a single successful flight. Russia unveiled this fifth-generation fighter back in 2021 at 2 major air shows in Moscow and Dubai. In both cases, the aircraft shown was just a mock-up, a non-flying model with no actual military value. But officials promised that Checkmate would take to the skies. Yet again, this did not happen. The first flight of Checkmate was postponed to 2024, then to 2025, and then to 2026. Well,
That is, it hasn't taken off at all yet. But everyone was told about it back in 2020, promising everyone to outmaneuver in 2021 quicker and smarter, and of course the most beautiful one, just like Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, exactly the same. But still, the time and billions spent on developing and perfecting this marvel have led to something, after all.
at the moment, these perfume bottles inspired by the Su-75 have turned out to be much more effective than the fighter jet itself. Test pilot Sergei Bogdan recently called for divine intervention just to get the Checkmate into the air.
The test pilot said they needed divine help just to get the Su-75 airborne. Checkmate, probably, yes, in Russian, it needs to get into the air. God's will. Not just any God yet. Of course, it's best to invite the Israeli one, then it'll take off. Otherwise, no, it won't take off. The Su-75 was announced as being cooler than the F-35 and could easily take out a dozen F-35s if given the chance. But that chance just hasn't come up.
Officials also claim that the Checkmate fighter will be equipped with advanced electronic warfare systems, supposedly turning it into a formidable demon of aerial combat. Even in direct confrontations with the best fifth-generation fighters, such as the F-35 and F-22. However, there is one significant problem. Russia currently does not have avionics capable of even detecting the F-35 and F-22 before they launch air-to-air missiles to strike their opponents. That is,
long before the Su-75 fires, takes off, and is able to detect the F-35. For example, it will already be shot down by a missile launched from that very F-35, but that's assuming, of course, that the Su actually takes off.
in addition, the range of American air-to-air missiles is greater than any Russian counterparts, and Russian long-range missiles only work with the support of early warning radar aircraft like the A-50. Russia has only about a dozen A-50s, and Ukraine has damaged and destroyed them during the war. In short, the Su-75 is still fueled by words alone. Moscow can claim that this aircraft surpasses the F-35, but the F-35 is proven in action, with a long track record of missions and successful combat operations. The Su-75, meanwhile, is still nothing more than a concept.
They should change the name of the aircraft and instead of Su-75 Checkmate, call it either Pshik or Puk. But not only in the air and on the ground. The latest Russian development does not meet the stated specifications. On the water in the area, the Russians have the same problem. Almost all talented scientists, researchers, engineers, and inventors have left them. Those who stayed, well, they can't create. They can stand nearby and puff up their cheeks. They can copy, sometimes change something, But Putin's Russia can't create anything new in any field of knowledge, because when there is no freedom, there is no creativity. There is no creativity. Nothing is born in captivity.
The country has also faced many failures. Failures such as the Project 2660 patrol ship. The first of these ships was laid down in 2014, followed by 5 more for a total of 6, one of which is still under construction. Of the 5 launched from 2017 to 2024, one, Sergei Kotov, has already been destroyed. Ukrainian forces sent it to the bottom on March 5, 2020 using Mediocrity 5 naval drones. The Ka-29 helicopter on board was also destroyed. Russia did not imagine this project like this at all. Project 22160 was supposed to be a bold, exciting, and innovative addition to the Russian Navy. It was intended to perform all the relevant tasks of a modern patrol ship, such as searching for and detecting enemy submarines, engaging combat with ships of a similar or smaller class, strike ground or sea targets, support other units, and also provide air defense when necessary. But it can't do any of that. Despite a displacement of 1,700 tons and a length of over 300 feet, 94 meters, it has almost no offensive capabilities, carrying only a single 76mm gun and a few basic machine guns, plus portable anti-aircraft missile systems.
1 second. Are they idiots? All of them. The ones who designed it, the ones who built it, the ones who accepted it, and the ones who praised it. The answer is simple. Yes, idiots. And careerists, of course. Idiots and careerists, that's a double combination. It dominates in modern Russia. Everywhere you need to bring something to your boss that your boss really wants, but you don't know how to do it. Yes, long live poodleism, that is mediocrity. In Russian, it means mediocrity. Russia today is a country of mediocrity, which, according to the Strugatsky brothers, means that the gray ones rule there, and they always bring the black ones to power. I don't mean Africans, I mean the black shirts. Talent and initiative have left. Kupish has gone to Paris, my mother used to tell me when I was a child. And here, talent and initiative have gone to Paris, Berlin, London, and mostly to New York. Not for the first time, it's now only the places most people used to visit that have changed. And so, in the places people are fleeing from, the gene pool is as bad as it can possibly be. Mediocrity remains, loyalty remains, the lack of risk remains, and any initiative is punished. Well, it's backward, primitive, dull, sleepy Russia, hating everything and everyone, but surviving because of gas, oil, timber, honey, down, and blueberries. Driving Ferraris and wearing gold Rolex Daytonas worth $20 million each, but even with a Rolex on their wrist, the new mediocrity can't invent anything because it's all about showing off, or at best, just a puff.
Originally, Russian engineers planned to equip the vessel with modular systems, such as interchangeable weapon modules for different missions and operating conditions. This idea originated in America, where more than 10 years ago the United States Navy was exploring the concept of modular littoral combat ships. But it was soon realized that in theory it sounded better than in practice, since the ships were very expensive and replacing the modules took weeks. Rather than learning from America's experience, Russia insisted on the idea, resulting in modular ships but lacking the necessary modules.
That's just like us. To steal an idea but not find out what actually happened to it and why it wasn't implemented.
The project 22 TI-160 is the most disastrous shipbuilding project in modern Russian history. Its shortcomings not only outweigh its advantages, but in fact, it doesn't really have any advantages at all. The minimal displacement resulted in completely insufficient seaworthiness. The modular armament was never made, so the ships remained in service with only a 76mm gun and a few 14.5mm machine guns.
Well, what can I say? Should I continue? One can only sigh and say it's a good thing someone didn't give horns to this pushy cow. But let's take a look at another remarkable example of Russian science, technology, and propaganda. The easiest thing is to change the label. In fact, it used to be an amazing fifth-generation bomber, but when they couldn't steal the ideas, they called it a sixth-generation bomber just to buy some time. They still hope to steal something.
Like the B-2 Pagda has a flying wing design with special radar-absorbing coating and no vertical stabilizers. The stated range of its flight is about 7,500 miles or 12,000 kilometers, and the stated payload is 30 tons. And it is considered one of the most stealthy aircraft ever created. It stores all its munitions internally to minimize external surface area and achieve supersonic speeds without using afterburners. Various reports about this aircraft have also sometimes mentioned advanced laser weapons, network-centric warfare systems, and fully autonomous flight. Unfortunately, all these features and advantages remain hypothetical.
Well, in other words, it's blatant lying. Russia doesn't know how to do anything like that. If they could, they would have already used it elsewhere, but they can't. But it speaks very loudly, so loudly that it convinced itself.
While Russia's biggest rival, the United States, has been using stealth bombers for decades, the Kremlin's counterpart isn't going anywhere. Instead, the country's air force still has to make do with an increasingly outdated and depleted fleet of Soviet Tu-95S for its bombing operations. Ukrainian forces are known to have disabled a large number of Tu-95S during Operation Web. Russian commanders desperately need a new, more powerful bomber to replace them, such as the Pagda. But their dreams are not meant to come true, even though many factories have been actively working on this project for several years, including the Kazan Aviation plant, the Beryevo company, and the Novosibirsk Aviation plant. None of them have shown that they are even close to completion. Meanwhile, as yet another shameful mark that Russia has to bear, the United States has already moved on to the next generation B-21 bomber, Radar. This is also relevant considering the fact that Russia is facing increasingly strict and comprehensive sanctions on the products it is allowed to import, such as electronics, machine tools, and other materials for the defense industry. It is highly unlikely that the Pagda project will make any significant progress unless the war ends and the sanctions are eventually lifted. In the foreseeable future, like many other failed projects in Russia, Pagda will remain in limbo, and the country's armed forces will continue to use weak, worn-out, and rusty equipment. Ukrainian equipment is outdated, dry, and brittle.
Quite often, bots from Russia write to me that Russian science is the best, which reminds me of a joke. Soviet paralysis is the most progressive in the world. They have a missile that flies straight from the Kremlin right to Mar-a-Lago and hits the dining room. They have the only device in the world that flies much faster than light. Light itself can't catch up with it. They have engines that run on water, they have that, but they don't use it in Ukraine because they feel sorry for Ukrainians. Do we believe them? The answer will be complicated, meaning it won't be just one word, but more than two words. The answer will be this: are we completely stupid? I mean, well, maybe we are completely stupid, but not to that extent. So we've answered one question. Do we trust Putin's government? No, just to make it clear for everyone. Well, we need to, or in Hebrew, lo means the same thing. From the word well, we don't trust them at all. Now, the second epical question: what do they actually want in the Kremlin? What do they want? What is it that they want? To continue the war? They really didn't want to when in 22 they got hit in the face, but then they decided that the fewer people live on their territory, the fewer worries they have. You must care for the population and give them at least a ruble, whether they want it or not. So they sent prisoners, the insane, drunks from city streets to be slaughtered, and they really want as many of them as possible to be killed. Oil and gas bring in enough money to arm these big thugs, and there's even enough left over for cappuccino with, well, I don't know, some have it with a muffin, some with cocaine. A kickback is looming ahead, which means the United States might stop funding Ukraine and possibly the collapse of NATO. That sounds so tempting and beautiful. Ukraine won't even be able to resist, they think, in Moscow, and in a year or two it will fall like a ripe pear, and nothing will need to be done. Well, maybe we'll cut off the western part. We'll cut it off, but we won't share anything with anyone. Just so they don't get underfoot, let them live however they want. Even if they unite with Lithuania over there, everything up to the western regions will become originally Russian again, and we'll get fertile soil and a bunch of minerals. There were 30 million people down from 45 million as some have fled and others will remain in the West. If Ukraine doesn't sign a peace agreement, neither the United States nor Europe will formally defend it. If it does sign, then the United States, let's say, will leave Marines and missiles on the separation line for about 10 years and will start mining minerals under the signed contract. And if not, will the United States come to Russia for those rare earths and other resources, whatever they're interested in? That's why it seems that Russia will do everything possible to make sure peace with Ukraine isn't signed, especially since after a formal peace, conflicts might start breaking out. Well, regarding the conduct of the war and its results within Russia itself, who needs this? Who is sitting in the Kremlin right now? So what's the conclusion? Putin's hawks, just like Brezhnev's, Khrushchev's, Stalin's, and now I'll surprise you, they are deceivers, liars, no more and no less than Brezhnev's, Khrushchev's, or Stalin's. Exactly the same brazen bullies with aristocratic airs and the mentality of a plebeian who have as much honor and dignity as Somali scammers in Minnesota. Only the Russian ones have stolen more than the $8 billion that the Somalis swindled in America. And what is the Ukrainian leadership counting on? They're hoping that maybe in a year or two, Russia will collapse. Maybe civil wars will start. Between, say, Moscow and the outskirts, or between, say, Nikolai Patrushev, the ideologist of the security wing, and Ramzan Kadyrov, the regional security baron, or the technocrat-bureaucrat Mishustin and the representative of Putin's family, Boris Kovalchuk. And also, Anna, what's her name, Tsiviliva, I can't quite remember, I forgot the last name. Yes, well, tests die. Someone will withdraw troops from Ukraine, send them into a storm on Moscow, chaos will erupt in the regions, and they will seek Ukraine's protection, bringing happiness. It seems that this is the only rational explanation for Ukraine's policy, to put it in Las Vegas terms. To bet all your money, your life, and your children's future on black and wait for what tomorrow brings. Thumbs up, you live as heroes. Thumbs down, and then it's over for everyone. Absolutely everyone. So I have a question for you, dear listeners, viewers, and watchers. Would you bet your children's future on code? Where the odds are 50-50? That's it, nothing more to read. Share with your friends, subscribe, download the fascinating political economy Capitalism 101 for free, and gentlemen, become sponsors of the channel. It's $4 you can give more, but the minimum is $4 a month. And if you subscribe for a year, it comes out to $3 each month. That's it. So once again, happy upcoming holidays. I think I'll go live once or twice more before New Year's, but if someone doesn't hear from me, well, so that we have clear skies. So, over Ukraine and Israel, clear skies without explosions and killings. In Russia, to get rid of this filth if we ever manage to. I don't just mean Vladimir Vladimirovich, I mean everyone else too. Well, and for us to clean out our stables, goodbye.